Hey everyone, the St. George election this year is incredibly important. Go to votestg.com to see who's running and what they stand for, or visit us at our voter booth at Digby's Market, Red Rock Bicycles, or down in the park.
We were to that point where we started, the idea of, hey, we have 3 old parks, but it's a growing community. We just inherited one in Bloomington, 4. Now we got 5. And Perkins has talked the city into building a park in Bloomington Hills, and so we're now we have 6 parks, and the neighbors are loving it. We're hearing good things, et cetera, et cetera. And we did have what was a park impact fee that had been applied when new growth came in. A certain portion of those fees were towards new parks. But when you get a little here and a little there and a little there, it takes a lot of littles before you can get big to be able to build one thing.
Yep.
So we really didn't have the kind of any money to match for trails. And so that was when the idea was, where are we going to get this money? And so in concert with the city manager, we talked about, perhaps there's an opportunity to do a bond. Well, a bond means they're going to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. Well, this conservative community of ours hasn't raised taxes in years and years and years at that point. So, is the city going to support that? Well, so we're thinking if we were to do something like that, then we would need to have the community need obviously to support this, but we would then have monies that we could then match grants that we could then start building things, trails and parks and other facilities.
Because you establish the bond on the front end, because it's, let's say the federal government or the state government say, hey, we're going to do this grant program. And then there's kind of the door opens, and the cities, all the cities around or the states go to these federal entities or state entities and say, well, we have money to match. We'll go get it. But there's only so much. So if you don't have the money right away, because you can't say, hey, we'll do it. But then if you don't have the money, is that kind of how it works? Or could you do it almost in retrospect, be like, hey, we'll match it. And then you get the grant and go back to the people and try to raise it. That seems you're going backwards into it a little
scary.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, they're usually 75-25 or 50-50 kinds of grants or those type of things. And so it's good to have the money in hand when you do that.
Yeah.
Because you have to commit that actually on your paperwork, when you're
applying. You got to commit to it. Yeah.
So that dialogue started happening. And one day I had a business owner and an avid tennis player come into my office and say, we need some facilities. Our community is starting to grow here in the 80s.
Yeah.
In the early 90s, our community is starting to grow, and there's a great demand out there. And all we've got is a couple of tennis courts here and whatever. And this tennis player is saying, we've got too many people and not enough places to play. And how are we going to do that? And I had the same thing with them,
It's like pickleball these days.
Yeah.
We don't got enough places to play our pickleball.
There you go.
Vernon Worthen is packed all the time. All the time.
And so, and that's good, right?
It's good.
So they said, what do we do? And I said, well, here's the same story, because I've had these people come in and ask me about soccer. These people have asked me about building more, softball fields, whatever. But the city just doesn't have the funds to be able to build these capital projects at this time. And so I said to him, he said, well, who should we talk to? I said, well, the city council, frankly, needs to be talked to in these situations. If you feel as a resident you want it, be heard. So they got on the city council agenda and they made an impassioned plea. Mm-hmm. And it was heard. And the council said, well, that looks like something. And, they were saying, the community, the residents want this kind of thing. Well, we need to determine that. And so the council decided that they would do a study to determine what the real needs were in the community. Mm-hmm. And so they asked me if I would suggest a few names, and they have some names, and they put together a committee. We called it the Parks and Recreation Committee. How creative.
Yeah, right.
And so they were tasked with the responsibility to investigate from a resident point of view what the perceived needs were, and then to come back to city council with what they discovered. And so I can't remember exactly how many people were on it. It was 8 or 10 or something like that. Individuals were asked, and they all agreed to serve. And they met with some regularity and decided, you know what, for us to better do this, we better create some subcommittees. But first, let's have some public open houses. So they actually sponsored some public open houses and packed open houses. The public were coming in and said, these are things we'd like to see. And so after taking really good notes, they decided, well, let's categorize these into certain areas: field sports, soccer, which would be like soccer and lacrosse and
softball,
rugby and whatever. Well, in softball and baseball, they had their own separate category.
Okay.
The swimmers wanted some place to swim year-round. The tennis people wanted more tennis courts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the trails people wanted to see more trails built in the community.
Golf community was quiet at this point.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. So
I don't know if we have time for the golf story.
So they, after hearing all these groups, they said, well, let's create some subcommittees.
Mm-hmm.
So subcommittees were created for each one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
The city employees were ex officio note takers, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would take the materials that came back from the committee, and then we would put it on paper. For instance, if there was demands for a soccer complex or something like that, we would then go back and try to draw up some preliminary kinds of ideas, et cetera. And
Mm-hmm.
as that committee progressed, they changed their name from Parks and Recreation to Quality of Life Committee. And the committee then
I love the name of that. I really do like the name of this, because it's so easy to get stuck into, you know, you have this governing body, right, that says, okay, we need to make sure we prioritize public safety, and we need to prioritize utilities, right? A utility meaning everybody in the community is using it, right? Whether they like tennis or pickleball or not, a utility is where everybody needs these services, right? So public safety, utilities, whether it's transportation, water, fire, all the stuff here. The quality of, you can have a life and you can be governed by this group, but the quality at which we experience Southern Utah and what makes Southern Utah, it's a facet of all of these things. It's this big bucket of all of this stuff. It's not just the minimal government side and what that role really looks like. It's a nuance. There's a blend between these two things. And I think this is why a lot of times we get so caught up in, okay, what is it the government's role? Because what I'm thinking in my head is it really the city's role to fulfill the needs and wishes of these, kind of niche groups, right? These individual communities that are wanting this thing. Is it their role to facilitate this, or could they not have just said, hey, there's this quality of life group that organizes on their own, and it's a private organization, and they can go do that, and the city says, hey, yep, the zones look like all are good. If you want to go through with that, go for it. Kind of raise your own money type of thing, right? So I can kind of see this balance between the two, but it's not as simple as that, right?
No, but the word that you hit on was balance.
Yeah.
A successful community is balanced.
Yeah.
And the effort is to try to create an environment that is pleasant, pleasant, and safe, and rewarding and uplifting and all those other kinds of things, if you can, in a balanced kind of a way.
Yeah.
And if you shift any way too far to one or too far to the other, things get out of balance, and then you have all kinds of issues, just potholes and other kinds of problems in your streets, and crime, et cetera. So you want to balance. So we have our work a day, and then we have our other time, often referred to as leisure time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a balance, and councils are, those councils in those days recognize that, and not just those days, but that the balance is really important. And when the residents are asking for those kinds of things, then there's an effort to try to meet those needs, because our public servants represent the interests supposedly of our community, right?
Yeah.